Have you ever felt something profoundly real between two people, even when nothing has been spoken? A glance so deep, it makes you forget where you are. A quiet yet steady presence. A sense that something is unfolding on a level far beneath words. Women are taught by society to listen to words, to wait for declarations, to immerse themselves in hollow professions of love. But Carl Jung, one of the greatest psychologists of all time, revealed that true love does not speak in words. It acts through the unconscious. When a man truly loves, his mind enters a state beyond his control, where archetypes begin to operate, where the ego is challenged, and truth begins to speak through expressions that cannot be faked. The problem is, many women fail to recognize this. They overlook the invisible yet unmistakable signs, and then wonder why they keep loving the wrong people, why they are deceived by sweet words lacking substance. So how can you truly know when a man loves you deeply? In today's video, you will join me in exploring the silent language of the unconscious, which can only be read through intuition and a profound understanding of human psychology. Stay until the end, because what I'm about to share could forever change the way you understand love. Number 1, Jung and the psychological mechanisms when a man loves. When a man truly loves, the first thing that happens is not an emotion, it is an unconscious shift. A seismic wave from the deepest layers of the psyche begins to reverberate. And the most terrifying part is, he cannot control it. Carl Jung called this the activation of archetypes, primordial patterns that exist within the collective unconscious of humanity. These are not products of reason, nor are they social reflexes. They are the blueprints of the soul, a spiritual legacy etched into every psychological cell. And within a man's psyche, there is a powerful archetype called the lover. This archetype does not emerge when he is merely attracted to physical appearance. It does not awaken simply because of an engaging conversation or a night of physical intimacy. The lover only truly stirs when a man senses something calling to him from the other side. Something that makes it impossible for him to turn away. A glance, a gesture, something so small that even he cannot comprehend why his mind is so completely consumed. This is not love at first sight. It is an inner upheaval. Jung described this as the moment when archetype meets archetype. When the image of the woman he faces aligns deeply with the unconscious image of the anima, the ideal woman, the representative of the lost soul within a man's psyche. You may have experienced such a moment. A man says nothing explicit, but you feel that he is being pulled into something greater than himself. He becomes quieter, more attentive, more present. There is no plan, no strategy, only a trillic state of nameless emotion. This is because a profound mechanism has been set in motion. The ego begins to tremble as it is threatened by the presence of someone who touches the depths of the unconscious. At that moment, reason no longer holds the reins. The unconscious takes the wheel. And when this happens, the man begins to change, not to impress you, but because he can no longer live as he once did. Jung once wrote, "We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." When a man truly loves, he does not merely enter a relationship. He embarks on an inner journey where his very self is placed under scrutiny. He begins to recognize his shortcomings, his fears of abandonment, his unhealed memories, and things that have never been named. Thus, true love for a man is not euphoria, but an inner struggle. And paradoxically, a man who truly loves often does not know how to express it. You may encounter a man who seems cold, silent, or even avoidant, and you might think he doesn't care. But Jung would say, no, He is defending himself against a psychological experience so vast that he hasn't fully grasped it. When the archetype of the lover arises, a man is caught between two forces: the desire to transcend his old self and enter a sacred union with you, and the fear of being hurt, losing control, or losing himself. Jung described this as the ego wrestling with the unconscious, where social masks, the persona, are threatened, and the individual is forced to be honest with themselves. A simple example: a man who is typically stoic, independent, and always follows a plan. But since meeting you, he has become inconsistent, forgets his principles, and does things that are unlike him. It's not because you've made him weak. It's because he is being swept into a new reality, where intuition outweighs reason and emotion surpasses social structure. Jung believed that a man who truly loves undergoes a psychological splitting. He is forced to choose either to dive deeper into that connection and allow himself to be transformed, or to retreat and remain in the safety of his ego. This is why you see some men who love deeply but run away. It's not because they lack feelings. It's because they lack the inner strength to engage in the process of individuation that true love demands. True love, according to Jung, is not merely an emotion between two people, but the beginning of a profound inner journey. When a man loves, it is not just the relationship that is tested. His very essence, his soul, must also transform. He begins to dream more, to feel more deeply, to be haunted by small details. And above all, he loses his sense of control. This explains why a man who truly loves can become clumsy, hesitant, or silent. It is not indifference. It is his psyche screaming in silence. And the remarkable thing is, he cannot fake this. Jung stated that the unconscious always reveals itself through unintentional behaviors. And it is these expressions that hold the truth. The man who truly loves is not the one who speaks the most or promises the most, but the one whose actions are driven by his psyche to the point where they defy reason. If you notice a man altering his rhythm of life, restructuring his priorities, showing up when you don't ask, remembering things you didn't expect, or simply looking at you as though he is seeing himself, that is not chivalry. It is the unconscious at work. And when his actions no longer stem from calculated reason, but from an inner pull he cannot resist, you will begin to see distinctive signs, invisible yet consistent clues that the unconscious leaves on the surface of everyday life. These are not deliberate signals, but the silent language of true love. Now let's move to the most critical part: the 8 unconscious signs that a man truly loves you. If you're ready to embark on this journey with me, leave the number 1 below as a sign to begin. Number 2, the 8 unconscious signs that a man truly loves. Sign 1, his gaze. If the soul is a profound realm that words cannot touch, then the eyes are where the unconscious begins to whisper. Carl Jung once said, "Intuition is one of the 4 basic psychological functions, along with thinking, feeling, and sensing." Nowhere on a man's body does the truth reveal itself more clearly than in the way he looks at you. When a man truly loves, his gaze changes. It is not a fleeting glance of conquest or an instinctual look of desire. It is a focused, present stare, as if he is trying to memorize every contour of you, not with his memory, but with his emotions. There is no plan, no agenda. He simply cannot help but look. At a deeper psychological level, Jung explained that when the archetype of the lover awakens, a man's unconscious sends signals outward through subtle expressions, and the eyes are one of the most honest. You might catch him quietly watching you when he thinks you're not paying attention. His gaze is unhurried, unflinching, as if seeking to connect with something far deeper than the physical, with your very soul. Modern neuroscience has even confirmed what Jung intuited. When we love deeply, the sympathetic nervous system becomes highly active, causing pupils to dilate, heart rates to shift, and gazes to anchor longer on the person we love. This is a reaction that cannot be faked. A man may control his words, but he cannot control the dilation of his pupils when he looks at you. Have you ever encountered such a gaze? A look that makes you feel not just seen, but felt, not just observed, but touched on an invisible level. Jung called this the recognition of the soul, when a man does not merely see you, but sees the unformed parts of himself reflected in you. And this is only the first sign, because when a man truly loves his entire being, begins to realign to include you in the orbit of his life. And this will manifest most clearly in a place you might not expect, time and space. Sign 2. He restructures his life to include you. No one can pretend to love when they must consistently rearrange their life's rhythm for someone else. This is what Jung meant when he pointed out that the unconscious does not merely manifest through emotions. It profoundly shapes behavior. A man who truly loves you doesn't need to be prompted to show up. He doesn't seek you out only when he's free. He adjusts his entire rhythm, his routines, his work, and his schedule to be present with you. Not because you demand it, but because he wants to. In analytical psychology, Jung observed that when love originates from the unconscious, it permeates and reshapes the conscious structure. This means love is not found in words like, "I'll try to make time for you," but in the quiet yet resolute rearrangement of his life. The clearest example: notice a busy man who still sends a small message every morning. It's not long-winded, but it's consistent and timely. Or perhaps he cancels a hangout with friends to take you to a doctor's appointment, even when you didn't ask. This is when his inner universe has shifted its center, and you are now at the core of that orbit. And it's not just time. Space changes too. Jung noted that we unconsciously close the distance with those who awaken deep emotions within us. Pay attention. He sits closer to you, even in a crowded group. His body subtly turns toward you. His hand accidentally rests near yours. His steps slow to match yours. This isn't a flirting tactic. It's an unconscious force field, a pull from the soul expressed through the body that cannot be faked. And most importantly, all this presence is not just about being there. It's about protecting. Because when a man truly loves, he doesn't just show up. He becomes a silent guardian of your inner world. Sign 3. His body inexorably moves toward you. A man can use words to conceal his emotions, but his body cannot. According to Carl Jung, the unconscious does not reside solely in dreams or vague memories. It lives in every action, every movement, every micro-reaction that the ego cannot control. And one of the clearest places where the unconscious speaks is in the physical distance between two people. When a man truly loves his body, unconsciously moves toward you. In a crowd, he stands closer to you than to others. In a group conversation, his torso subtly leans toward you. His feet point in your direction, and his eyes seek you out like a compass, finding true north. He may not touch you, but every muscle in his body resists pulling away from you. Jung emphasized that the ego may hide, but the unconscious always moves toward where it senses life. And when you are the spark of that life within him, no matter how much his reason commands otherwise, he is drawn to you like an invisible gravitational force. Have you noticed this? A man who truly loves doesn't need to hold your hand constantly. But when you enter a room, the space between you seems to shrink. He unconsciously closes the gap, not to control you, but because his inner self seeks to merge the space between you. A slight brush as he passes by, a hand gently placed on your back as you navigate a crowd, eyes tracking you as you move. These are not acts of social chivalry. They are signs of an unconscious connection taking shape, his body speaking for his heart. And notice this too. His response to touch changes. A brief hug slows his breathing. A light touch on his arm causes his eyes to pause. Not because he's never touched a woman before, but because with you, touch becomes a primal channel of communication, transcending words. Jung believed that when love stems from the unconscious, it revives emotions dulled by societal conditioning, making a person more alive, more sensitive, and more vulnerable than ever. And this leads to the next sign. Because when a man truly loves you, his memory begins to change. Not in a rational way, but in a strangely profound one. A selective memory, where you are the detail that cannot be erased. Sign 4. He remembers everything you say. The heart has its archive. There are small details you mentioned once and forgot soon after. But then one day, he recalls them with precision, naturally, without fanfare. Perhaps it's the dish you loved as a child, a movie scene that made you cry, or the name of your childhood pet he remembers, even though you never told him to. Carl Jung pointed out that we don't remember the most important things through willpower, but through emotional connections imprinted by the unconscious. In Matosz Sienowicz, in other words, emotional memory doesn't come from effort. It comes from a deep touch on the soul. When a man truly loves his brain, begins to change how it filters information. Things related to you, even the trivial, suddenly take priority in his memory. Not because he tries to remember, but because his unconscious recognizes you as significant as meaningful. This is a proven psychological mechanism. The LIC system, which processes emotions, plays a key role in long-term memory. But what's remarkable here is not just that he remembers, it's how he remembers. You casually mention hating the sound of ticking clocks when you sleep. A week later, there's no ticking clock in his room. You mention a book you loved as a teenager. He buys it, places it on his shelf, as if it's an extension of you. No reminders needed, no tests required. Because when you've entered the deepest emotional field of his psyche, everything about you becomes data stored, without rational filtering. Jung called this spiritual embodiment. When someone doesn't just remember you, but you become part of their psychological structure. You exist not in cliched images, but in their subconscious. And when you live in a man's unconscious, the next thing is inevitable. He begins to lower his walls and let you see the part of him the world is not allowed to witness. Sign 5. He lowers the armor of his ego around you. A man may be stern with the world, but if one day he rests his head on your shoulder or shares his emotions with you, you are witnessing something profoundly rare, the vulnerability of the masculine ego. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, but to become one's true self, one must dare to remove every mask, including the mask of strength and invincibility that society has placed on men since they were boys." When a man truly loves, the psychological walls of defense begin to crack. Not because he's grown weak, but because you've touched the hidden, sensitive region, the shadow that only the unconscious can lead to. Jung called this the shadow, the rejected, suppressed part that holds the deepest potential for transformation. Don't expect a dramatic confession. Vulnerability doesn't always come with tears. It might appear one evening when he shares how his father once belittled him, or when you see him pause at the mention of a dream he abandoned. When he shows you an unhealed wound, he is placing trust in you. For in the male psyche, revealing weakness is taboo. But when he loves deeply, the protective mechanisms crumble, and the real unadorned person begins to emerge. He no longer fears you seeing his flaws. He fears more that you won't see his true self. This is a profoundly sacred moment. Jung believed that only in the safe space of a soul connection does the shadow dare step into the light. When a man loves you enough to shed the armor of his ego, it's not just love, it's rebirth. And when he's brave enough to be honest with you, something else begins to emerge. He starts weaving you into every corner of his life. No more boundaries or private spaces. He wants you to be part of his world. Sign 6. You become part of his life. When a man truly loves you, he doesn't just want to be near you. He wants you to belong to his world, not as a passing guest, but as a natural extension of himself. Carl Jung called this the process of psychological assimilation, where someone is not just emotionally connected, but recognized as part of one's very being. For men, this is especially significant, as society often teaches them to compartmentalize emotions. But when the unconscious is awakened by true love, those boundaries blur, and you begin to appear in spaces he once kept to himself. You don't need to demand to meet his friends. He introduces you to them as a matter of course, without hesitation or ambiguity. You may have only been together a few weeks, but you're invited to a family gathering or to join an activity he does every month. Not because he needs to prove anything, but because his unconscious has already woven you into his vision of the future. A clear example: when a man introduces you to his closest friend, the one he shares his deepest thoughts with, it's not just to please you. It's an unconscious acknowledgement that you are one who belongs. Jung emphasized that we bring significant people into our intimate circle not to show them off, but to bear witness to their role in our inner world. You might also notice this sign when he effortlessly says, "we" instead of "I." This is when his language reflects a new unconscious state. He no longer sees himself as an entirely independent entity. Simple plans like traveling in the summer, watching the game this weekend, or even picking a new sofa for the living room suddenly include you in their vision. And most importantly, he doesn't feel a loss. On the contrary, he feels complete. Jung described true love as a return. The other is not just an object of love. They are the missing piece in the architecture of our soul. When a man realizes this, he stops guarding separate spaces. He shares not out of duty, but out of a natural urge. And when this integration runs so deep, he begins to speak of a future with you in it. Sign 7. He mentions you in his visions of the future. A man may love you, but still place you outside his future. This is a painful truth many avoid facing. But Jung didn't shy away from it. He believed that someone who truly loves doesn't just live in the present with you. They begin to rebuild a future with you at its center. When love comes from the unconscious, it doesn't just alter present emotions, it shifts the entire map of time in a man's mind. He no longer thinks of the future as an independent concept. Everything he imagines, plans, and unconsciously carries your shadow. You don't need to press him with questions like, "When will you get serious?" Because when a man truly loves, your presence in his future isn't a choice, it's natural. He talks about a winter trip and uses "we" instead of "I." He discusses moving career upgrades or caring for his parents. And somehow, you're always part of that vision. This act reveals something crucial. You've entered the unconscious strategy of his life. A man who truly loves doesn't need to write his life plan on a whiteboard to prove it. He reveals it in casual remarks, distant gazes, shared plans about finances, work, or even human desires. Like, "Someday, I want to live by the sea with you and a garden." And crucially, he isn't afraid of that vision. No avoidance, no hesitation, no sense of being trapped. On the contrary, A future with you brings him peace, because you're not a temporary lover. You are the activated anima in his unconscious, the part he wants to hold on to become a more complete version of himself. And when a man places you in his future, one thing is certain to follow. He will act on an instinct to protect, without you asking, without you reminding him, because your safety becomes a mandate from deep within his soul. Sign 8. He cannot bear to see you hurt. Have you ever felt a man's gaze, not one of possessive desire, but a quiet concern? When you're tired, hurt, or silent, a steady, silent presence, as if he would take on all your pain if he could. Not every man can love at that depth. But when one does, you'll know, because his actions no longer come from will, but from instinct. Carl Jung called this the guardian complex, a psychological structure buried deep in the unconscious, awakened only when a man meets someone who touches the most fragile part of his soul. When this happens, protecting you is no longer a conscious act. It becomes a reflex. Have you seen a man, busy as he is, call you back the moment you text, "I'm not feeling okay"? Or a man who's not great at comforting, but still fumbles to make you smile even a little, because your sadness tightens his heart in a way he can't fully understand. Jung said, this is the formation of an unconscious bond, where you are no longer just someone special. You are a living part of his emotional core. Jung emphasized that we don't truly care for someone until their pain activates the shadow within us. This means a man who truly loves doesn't just shield you from external harm. He wants to heal the wounds you hide. He may not speak poetic words, but he'll sit silently beside you when you want no one around. He'll listen when you talk about a difficult childhood. He'll remember what makes you anxious, not to control you, but to avoid hurting you further. And most importantly, he doesn't do this to earn your love. He does it because if you hurt, he cannot rest. If you're anxious, you cannot sleep. If you cry, he feels helpless. Not because he's weak, but because his heart has placed you in the most sacred, safe space of his unconscious. Jung believed that true love always comes with spiritual responsibility. A man who loves you sincerely won't ask, "What do you need me to do?" He knows what to do because the connection has surpassed rational control. You are no longer just a lover. You are one of the missions of his life. When love operates at such a profound level, not everyone is attuned enough to recognize it when it happens. And sadly, many, even when standing before genuine love, lose it blinded by the haze between reality and illusion. This is when we must pause to recognize and unmask the beautiful but deceptive facades that lead us astray from the truth. If you're still reading this, I want to offer my deepest thanks. Journeying together through the depths of this psychological exploration is never easy. And now, it's time to face the most challenging part, the dangerous misconceptions about love. Number 3, warning misconceptions about love. There is a bitter paradox in love that few dare to face. Many people fail to recognize true love even when it stands clearly before them. Instead, they cling to dazzling but hollow signals, dramatic but empty behaviors, and call them passion or destiny. Jung once warned, the creative mind plays with the object it loves. And in love, it is these illusions that cause many to miss the chance to encounter a deep, authentic, and rare connection in their lifetime. One of the greatest misconceptions is the belief that true love always comes with intense fervor, constant messages, late-night calls, fiery jealousy arguments, followed by passionate reconciliations, all create the illusion that this love is overwhelming. But Jung would ask a different question. Is this love, or merely the chaotic reaction of two immature egos? For in the unconscious experience, true love does not shatter you. It deepens you. It does not breed doubt. but opens a space of inner peace where you don't have to struggle to be loved, prove your worth, or fight to keep the other's presence. Many women believe that if a man doesn't say, "I love you," every day, doesn't promise a future, or doesn't post about them on social media, it isn't true love. But this is the most insidious trap. Jung pointed out that what appears too loudly on the surface is often the ego's attempt to mask a deeper emptiness. A man who says he loves you daily, but vanishes when you need him, isn't loving you. He's in love with his own fleeting emotions. In contrast, a man who quietly fixes your car because he knows you can't afford repairs without saying a word may care for you deeply, pouring love into actions rather than flaunting it outwardly. Another dangerous misconception is equating love with desire. Modern society places physical attraction at the center of love, but Jung made it clear desire is an instinctual phenomenon, while love is a psychological process. A man may desire you intensely, yet remain entirely void of a soul connection. He wants you, but doesn't see you. He touches your body, but fails to reach the loneliness in your heart. True love, as Jung defined it, is the process by which the other becomes a mirror, helping us recognize ourselves, not a tool to satisfy fleeting emotions. And if you feel empty after intimacy, if you find yourself wondering, "Am I being used?" you already have your answer. Many confuse superficial attention with deep commitment. For example, he remembers your birthday, sends flowers, speaks sweet words, but disappears when you face a crisis. You lose your job, and he's silent. You're anxious about family issues, and he says, "I don't know what to say." In analytical psychology, Jung called this the persona, the social mask constructed to function in the external world. Someone may excel at playing the ideal lover, but lack the emotional maturity to be a true companion when life gets complex. True love, as Jung affirmed, does not shy away from crisis, but becomes clearer in moments of human vulnerability. One of the most common and enduringly painful mistakes is believing that true love will come if you love enough. Many women burn themselves out to hold on to a man. They endure, forgive, sacrifice, and wait in weary hope. They tell themselves, "If I'm better, if I'm patient enough, he'll change." But Carl Jung warned of this early on. The more you sacrifice, the more you feed the other's shadow rather than awaken their light. True love does not require you to destroy yourself. It demands that you become a stronger version of yourself, and the other chooses to walk with you. Not because of what you do, but because of who you are. And the most terrifying truth is this: the most beautiful illusions often blind us to painful realities. Jung said, "The unconscious never lies, but the mind can distort every signal to avoid facing the fear of abandonment, of being unloved, of being alone." This is why so many, despite receiving clear signs that the other isn't genuine, persist in drowning in hope. They don't love that person. They love the expectation of that person. They love the story they've imagined, not the human standing before them. So how do we escape these misconceptions? Jung offered no formula, but gave a golden principle. Listen to the darkness. The darkness is where intuition resides. It's where you know something is wrong, even if you can't articulate it. It's where you feel yourself shrinking, losing energy, doubting yourself, even when the outside world calls it a relationship. When your intuition tells you this isn't true, love, don't rush to silence it with excuses. True love does not cause prolonged doubt. It doesn't make you feel crazy, force you to play the easygoing girl to be kept, or strip you of your freedom, individuality, or inner voice. True love, though quiet, is where you can be yourself and still be loved. And a man who truly loves you won't leave you constantly questioning his feelings. His unconscious has already spoken through his gaze, his actions, his presence. If you see nothing, it's not because you're blind. It's because love isn't there. Jung left us a precious legacy, the clear distinction between a true connection and an illusory one. And it is psychological clarity, not romanticization, that will serve as your compass to navigate out of the maze of misconceptions toward a love that is truly deep healing and capable of guiding you to inner growth. Carl Jung didn't teach us to love with strategies. He taught us to look straight into our darkness, where unhealed wounds linger, where the ego tries to control, where we fear hurt so deeply that we settle for empty relationships just to avoid loneliness. But true love doesn't arise from avoidance. It grows only when you're brave enough to step through illusions, to see what is truly happening beneath what seems like love. You may discover that the person who kept you awake for nights was merely an illusion your unconscious painted to fill some void. You may realize that the quiet person standing by your side all this time is the one loving you with their entire being. And perhaps for the first time, you'll be still enough to hear the whisper of your soul. I deserve a love deeper than anything I've ever known. If you feel that what I've shared has helped you on your journey to decode love, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications today so you won't miss videos that unravel psychology, humanity, and yourself. Because the next video might arrive exactly when you need it most.